Can teachers be effective in less than 40 hours a week? I don't think so.
Welcome to Hack Learning Uncut with your host, Mark Barnes, a man who's not afraid to say that grades lie, homework sucks, and traditional teachers should be suspended indefinitely. Now, strap yourself in, listen up, and let's hack learning.
How many hours does it take for a teacher to be effective? Sounds like one of those jokes, right? Like how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? I don't really know the punchline. I'm sure there are many. But anyways, that's what that reminded me of. Thank you for joining Hack Learning and listening to the show and listening to me rant because we're uncut today. And if you're new here, you know that, you don't know. If you're new here, you'll learn that uncut means just that. I make mistakes. I don't cut them out. I don't edit them. This is the unedited version of the Hack Learning podcast. So I take deep breaths sometimes, and I sniff sometimes, or I clear my throat sometimes, and none of it gets cut out. In our featured episodes, our full-length episodes that are not uncut, we sometimes do some interviews. We share show notes page, links to other things, and those are a little cleaner. But I like Uncut. It just gives me a chance to rant a little bit, and I'm happy that you're here and you're interested in listening, at least as long as I hold your attention, which hopefully will be for another few minutes. We try to keep these short. So in the beginning, I said, how long do teachers have to work to be effective? Can they be effective in less than 40 hours? And I said, I don't think so. So this is a topic that came up on Facebook. Someone shared a blog post. And this is a blog post that I'm not going to mention the author or the site. It's not because I don't want to promote the person. It's just that's just the choice I'm making. So deal with it. So anyways, you can find it on Facebook, I'm sure. But anyways, this guy who's an educator, who's an author, who has some work that I respect, writes this post that says he asked teachers to go home. So the idea is, he says, when the kids leave at the end of the day, go home. And basically, the post suggests that teachers are working too much, okay, that they think they have to stay late. And there's a variety of reasons in here. Many teachers act as if they have no choice. No matter what the reason, all believe that staying late after school makes them a better teacher, but they're wrong. So quitting, for lack of a better word, the post says, is good. And then there's a list of why to quit your workday. Now, I'm going to use this as a little disclaimer. First of all, I'm going to say that I think teachers have to work more than 40 hours, and I'll get to that. But I do think in this post that really what the main topic, I think the title of the post is wrong. And I think this message in the beginning of go home is wrong. I think the post is really about finding a work-life balance, being healthy. It says, quit for your health. And there's a list of things that you should do as an educator to be healthy. And there's a connection back to being a better teacher, saying that, if you're exhausted, you can't be successful. And if you're, there's a lot of things in here about eating. You need to be healthy. Strike this balance, because if you're not eating right, you'll be unhealthy and you'll be tired and you won't be effective as a teacher. A lot of that stuff in here. I really think it's about work-life balance, and that is a really important thing. So I guess that's the disclaimers. I want to say I'm not saying that an article that talks about being a healthy teacher and having a work-life balance is a bad thing. I think the message that you have to go home is bad, and I think it suggests that you don't have to work 40 hours. That you can work less as a teacher and be just as effective. And I don't think that's right. And I know that this is suggested because there's a link at the bottom of this post that says you can read more here, and it goes to stop working more than 40 hours a week. I think there are times when this works. In the entrepreneurial world, I think that the goal is to ultimately work less, but before you can work less, you have to work more. As a former classroom teacher, I left the classroom years ago, and I was a writer and a speaker, and I ultimately started Hack Learning, and that's the Hack Learning series, and my publishing company, Times 10 Publications, and we do books that I like to think make educators better. So in the beginning, though, I worked a lot more than I did when I was a classroom teacher. I was working 60, 70 hours a week, 7 days a week. But ultimately, I was able to build the business. It's successful. I'm happy. People like the books. And we do well. We have about 25 authors on the team now. So, I've been able to hire some people to take on some of the work that I did. So I now, honestly, I can work less than 40 hours a week and manage to maintain this business. But as a teacher, I was a classroom teacher for more than 2 decades. I found it very difficult to work. If I was under 40 hours, something was being let go. So I'm not going to say, I was the greatest thing in the world and I always worked 60 to 70 hours a week, because that's not true. There were weeks I did work less for whatever reason, maybe family responsibilities. But I think I was ineffective in those weeks because some things got left off. Maybe I wasn't at my best in front of the kids. Maybe I didn't interact as well. Maybe I didn't create the greatest lessons because I didn't put in enough time. Maybe the activities were lacking. Maybe I didn't grow professionally. And see, I believe that when you're talking about being effective, and someone on Twitter asked me this, I put a poll out, by the way, and I wanted to make sure that I mention that. See, I'm not using any notes here. We're in the uncut version, so something might be left out. So on Twitter, I put a poll out. How many hours a week do effective teachers need to work? Now, as of the time of this episode, this poll had just been up for a day. 90 votes, and I'm sure more will come in, but that's a pretty good sample size, 90 votes. And what it turned out to be was that only 26% of the people said to be effective, you can work 40 hours or less. And what I said is, how many hours do effective teachers need to work? 40 or less, 41 to 49, or 50 or more. And 42% said 41 to 49, and 32% said 50 or more. So what we're looking at is 74% of the people, and it's a pretty good sample size, believe that teachers have to work more than 40 hours a week to be effective. Now, someone said, what does it mean to be effective? And that's a fair question. Because, some people, I think we take the word effective and we feel like it's just okay. But to me, an effective teacher is one who does all the things you have to do to inspire teaching and learning, good teaching and learning in your class. You have to plan, you have to create, you have to build activities, and there's a lot of work in building some activities, projects, and all the things that go into those. You have to assess learning, and that really takes most of the time. You have to create visual aids, all of these things. You have to learn about what it is you're teaching. And people say, well, you should already know all that. Not really. I think if you're being an effective teacher, you're constantly growing, and you're learning more about your craft, and you're being better in the classroom at what you're delivering to kids. And I think you have to grow professionally. You have to listen to podcasts. You have to read blog posts, like the one that I used as an example, because it creates good conversation. So I like that. You have to join some Twitter chats or be in a Facebook group or a Voxer group. You have to connect with other educators, like-minded and those who maybe aren't like-minded with you, and talk about best practices and push back against what some people say, like I'm sort of doing now in this uncut version of the Hack Learning podcast. So these are important things. I don't know how you could possibly do that in 40 hours or less. I typically, I think for the most part, I worked probably in the 50-hour range, and there were weeks that it was more. But that doesn't mean I had to stay at school. That's another thing when I'll go back to this article about the blogger saying go home. There were times I went home. When my kids were small and I had kids riding a bus and they were going to get home right when my students left, and I had to hustle home to be with them. So that's important, but it doesn't mean that you don't continue to work. So, and as I said earlier, I'm not sure that is the entire message. So it could be that the message is just mixed, and I think that happens. We're seeing a lot of that now too. So in this uncut version, there's a little ranting going on. So I'm talking about how much teachers should work, and I also want to talk a little bit about semantics and about how we perceive things. I did a podcast episode recently of saying that we need to teach tolerance in school. And this was after some horrible things that happened in a protest, and people were killed and there was tons of violence, and it's all about hatred. And I said we need to teach tolerance and that we should leave politics out. And right away people pushed back and they said, well, can you really teach without being political? So, again, I think maybe there were some issues with perception there. So I did say we should leave politics out in that case, because it was one of those things where people were just focused on how the president reacted to a horrible event. And I think that the idea of going in and talking to kids and saying we need to be more tolerant of the differences that we see in others is an important thing. And other people were focused more on what the president was doing. So that's all. I think there was a mixed message there as well. Just as in this blog post, there may be a mixed message. So I think that we need to be really careful, especially on social media. We need to be really careful about what we write and what we say, what we tweet, what we share in a podcast, how we choose our words, which, in an uncut version of Hack Learning, it's easy to choose them in a manner that can be misunderstood. So I want to leave today making sure that we're clear on the message. And that is that, first of all, there's this trend in education for pushing or promoting that teachers should work less than 40 hours. And I don't know that can happen. You don't have to be at school that long. You don't have to stay till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. And you can certainly find your work-life balance, but I just don't know that you can do everything you need to do in 40 hours or less and be really effective as a teacher. You need to do a whole lot while you're not in the building. And the other thing about the mixed message is maybe that's just not all work. When I'm doing this, I don't consider it work, but it's a part of my work. When I'm on Twitter and I'm moderating a chat and I'm creating Twitter questions for a chat, I don't really consider that work because I enjoy it. But technically it's work. So it's all about that semantics piece again. So maybe people are saying, yeah, teachers have to work more than 40 hours, but I'm really just talking about what they do in school. And that's okay. We need to work more but we need to get joy from it. And that's going to be really important. And if you're a teacher, there should be joy. Okay, so I feel like I'm sort of all over the place. I'd be real interested to hear what you have to say on this matter, though. So feel free to tweet at us over at #HackLearning, and you can talk about 40-hour work week for teachers, talk about how we often misunderstand the message. Semantics plays a role in that. Any and all of that. You can join us on Facebook. Look up Hack Learning on Facebook. And if you want to join the Facebook Ambassadors group, check out hacklearningfree.com. You'll get free stuff. Plus, there's a link to that really special group of educators trying to hack learning and trying to make teachers' lives, students' lives better. Hey, thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. Tell your friends. Check us out at hacklearningpodcast.com.
Thanks for listening to Hack Learning Uncut with your host, Mark Barnes, an edu hacker who says you don't need another 5-year plan. If you're crazy enough to want more, check out hacklearningpodcast.com and read a Hack Learning book today, will ya? The entire series is available at hacklearningbooks.com.